On the edge of real and cyberspace, there's one place you can go, and you found it. Welcome to the Nightwise.com podcast, the one and only podcast with hacks, tips, and tweaks for cross-platform geeks. My name's Nightwise, and for the coming 60 minutes or so, I'll be your host on this episode of the Nightwise.com podcast, Season 14, Episode 2, Playing Around with Dietpi. For more information in the show notes, please head on over to the website www.nightwise.com, that's KNIGHTWISE.com, where you'll find the links to everything we talk about and the Nightwise.com media feed. Subscribe to that feed, and you can also get all of the MP3s of these podcasts in your podcatcher automatically. Hey guys and girls, it's great to be back behind the microphone again. It's been a while, but I decided it's my free night. The beautiful Niana is out for a photography course, and I am here holed up in my beautiful little messy den surrounded by all kinds of old computers and geeky stuff and padding. Enough padding to give you guys and girls a nice and warm microphone sound as I record the podcast. Great to be back with the Nightwise.com podcast, a podcast that lets technology work for you instead of the other way around. And that's actually quite what I want to talk about today, because I'm going to talk about Dietpi, a Linux distribution that, well, is kind of very close to the Nightwise.com philosophy, because it lets technology work for you instead of the other way around. Now, like all geeks, I am a geek that loves to experiment and play and in all manners possible, kind of extend my knowledge of computers and operating systems and Linux, and of course, let technology work for me. I have the Nightwise.com philosophy very close to my heart, and that says that you should get a maximum revenue out of the time that you spend with technology, so you can really make it work for you instead of just spending hours and hours tinkering with a computer. And that's kind of what I've been doing lately. I have been tinkering with my computer. Like every geek, I have a home server that, is kind of the central hub for my connections and my content and some of my processes and flows and my kind of workflow or geek flow that I do and, use every day. It's a central machine that I use to, download my podcasts, get my YouTube videos, sync them over to my OneDrive so they get distributed to my computer, make sure that I can use that server to remotely connect using a VPN or SSH. Basically, it's a central hub of the house. And that central hub of the house does get some use, and I also like to experiment around with the central hub of the house, and that is not always beneficiary to what the results are. Because, when you install things and throw them out and try different things, you kind of, impact the stability of your system, and before you know it, your kind of geeky, very nerdy project system becomes unstable. Now, that's not really a problem if it's just there to tinker with, but if you kind of integrated it into the workflow and into the home entertainment, and before you know it, it has become a kind of crucial system in your house that isn't working anymore. And that's exactly what I had a couple of weeks ago, where my old and trusty Linux server that has been up for quite a while now suddenly decided to, start acting up. So I thought, this is a great moment to kind of take another spare machine that I have lying around and redo the entire server from scratch. And that's kind of what I did. I started to build a machine that I had lying around. I think the machine was donated. I found a memory somewhere. I shoved in a hard drive, hooked it up to my network, and installed the Linux server on it, deciding that I would go completely from scratch and I would like to have a completely headless server that I could control remotely. Well, not really a problem. I kind of know how to get everything working. So piece by piece, and what I'll install on it, I'll talk to you a little bit later about. I started to, put all of the modules in place. I put up an SSH server and a Plex server and a download server and God knows what. And it took me the better part of a weekend, which was, fun because I learned a lot. I learned that the transmission daemon is not easily convinced to do what I want to do and has hidden its config files in many, many different directories, and that you kind of have to figure out who exactly is the user that's logged in and where you have to find this out and where it is in the config files and stuff. Very interesting stuff, but it does take quite a bit of time. I installed all the other services, and one of the more important ones is our Plex server, because that's the one that we use to play all our ripped DVD series to our TV. And it's also used to play the music that we have from our ripped CD collection to our different players and what have you. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, except it didn't work. At least it didn't work in a stable manner. When looking at the specs, I was suddenly confronted by maxed out CPUs that were running at 100%, while Plex was trying to index something. My network was kind of groaning under the stress of something else. And before I knew it, trying to play back even the most simple media or music didn't work. So basically, I was screwed. I had to start over, and I thought like, oh God, I have to start over, and it's going to take me quite a bit of time. I know how it works, but I don't know what doesn't work, and I don't really have the time to figure everything out because this system also has to work. I also want to enjoy using it. I can't play my music right now, can't watch my old TV shows. Darn. Isn't there a way to get this in a more simple way? Because if you look around, a lot of technology that we use today is kind of like an appliance. You just plug it in and it does what it needs to do. Now, I know you don't really learn from an appliance. You don't really learn why things work or how things work because, I don't know how a Google Home works. It just works. I just plug it in and that's it. But it works. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to find something that would give me the convenience of having an appliance, but also the complexity of a computer system that I can tinker with and that I can learn from? And believe it or not, that's exactly what I found. I found out about Dietpi. Dietpi? Well, let's dig in. Dietpi. Now, as the name says, this of course has everything to do with a Raspberry Pi. These single board, cheap mini computers that you can buy for about $40 and that you can experiment with all you want. They run different flavors of Linux and you can do just about, anything with it. You can have them run as a little server, or use them to teach your kids how to program, or even make an tiny desktop out of them. Or you can, go a little bit further than that and use it to control a robot or a weather station or what have you. There's even a Raspberry Pi controlled chicken coop project out there should you feel yourself in the position that you want to embark on that and have a Raspberry Pi driven chicken coop, which I don't see why you wouldn't. Huh? Or perhaps your chickens would like to have that. But that being said, Dietpi is a distribution that is configured specially towards single board computers. And I don't say towards Raspberry Pis because it's kind of geared towards multiple platforms. It's an optimized distro for single board computers, and it gives you a very basic and very slim and very efficient operating system, which is a Debian flavor, that is installed to the bare metal, and then you have all these interesting scripts. Now, using a command line interface, well, not a command line interface, a text-based interface, you can jump through menus and you can install all kinds of interesting software. Now, I know what you're going to say. Yeah, sure, Nightwise, we can do that with any system. Yeah, but the difference is these applications actually work. The install scripts are written very, very well in a way that if you just install whatever you want to install, you turn your Pi into, an FTP server or a media server or, a media player or a library server or what have you. Whatever you tick, whatever box you tick, It just works. So no messing around with the init.d configs where you have to boot everything and make sure that everything works and kind of worry about dependencies and versions and dive into GitHub to try to decode whatever the developer kind of thought that would be a manual, which are like 3 lines of mumbo jumbo magic that you don't understand. No, it just works. It's kind of the luxury of an appliance, and it still houses the whole simple Linux scripts that do whatever you want them to do. And you can still tinker around and do anything with it that Linux can, but all of the appliance-like server functionalities just work by using the script. Whoop-de-doo. So I had been playing around with Dietpi a couple of years ago, and when I kind of looked at the distro again, I thought like, wow, this is impressive. Perhaps I can offload quite a few services that I have to the old Raspberry Pi 3 that I have lying around. Sounded like a great plan. I could have my little Raspberry Pi 3 do all of the functionalities that didn't require a lot of CPU, but if I were to use Plex, I would be screwed. Because quite frankly, transcoding and stuff, Plex needs kind of a lot of CPU power, and the Raspberry Pi is everything, but it is not CPU intensive. But I thought, what the hell, I'll give it a try. So I played around with it and installed some of these services that I'm going to talk about later just as an experiment. And what do you know? It just worked. I installed a transmission server so I could download some torrent files. This took me forever when I was doing it manually, trying to find where the transmission daemon had hidden his config files. But this thing just, it just worked right out of the box. And I installed some other services, and they worked right out of the box. And I went like, wow, this is amazing. This is fantastic. I only wish it could work on that i386, that i5 64-bit PC that I have standing there with its 12 gigabytes of memory and its mega powerful CPU, which is basically now doing nothing while my little Raspberry Pi is working overtime. So I scrolled down and I kind of looked at all of the distributions that are supported by Dietpi, and there's a lot more than just Raspberry Pis. So I scrolled down and I found a Pine board and an Arduino, and then I thought, what is this? This is a Dietpi distribution for i386? Wait a minute. This is a Dietpi distribution written for a regular PC. I cackled. I laughed. I giggled because I thought, you know what? Now it's time. It's time to bring the power of my PC together with the convenience of a distribution like Dietpi and see what happens. Well, by the power of i386, I have the power.
I've made mistakes and I've been hard hit. I say so what? 'cause I've lost so fast all that I had. But when it's time to, I'll fight for you, 'cause you know you are why I've come so far. I've made mistakes and I've been hard-hit. I say, so what? So what if I did? I'm the clear eye, I'm the comeback kid. Start it over again. I'm the clear eye, I'm the comeback kid. I've made mistakes and I've been hard-hit. I say, so what? So what if I did? I'm the clear eye, I'm the comeback kid. Start it over again. I'm the clear eye, I'm the comeback kid.
You're listening to the Nightwise.com podcast with hacks, tips, and tweaks for cross-platform geeks.
All right, getting Dietpi on your i386 machine is not all as that different from getting Dietpi on your Raspberry Pi in a way that, it's not like installing a classic operating system. The classic way is you shove in a bootable thumb drive and it boots up from a kind of a live CD, and then you write that live CD to you install it on your hard drive. Now, with the Raspberry Pi, they do it differently. They just write the image directly to the SD card and boot from the SD card. Same thing with Dietpi for your PC, where you write the image using something like Etcher, which is now called Balena Etcher, which is really, really, really stupid because I can't find it in my start menu all the time. But using something like Etcher or I don't know, some other image writing software, you can download the Dietpi image on the Dietpi website for i386 and write that straight to your hard drive. So I yanked out the hard drive from my server. Be careful that you install it to the hard drive that's going to go on the server, not to the hard drive of your regular system, because otherwise you'll just wipe your PC. And your PC will be running Dietpi, and you don't really want that for a regular PC. You want it for a server. So, I yanked out a 128 gigabyte SSD that I still had lying around in my server, blasted Dietpi on there, and boom, it just works. It will boot up into the Dietpi command line interface. You can log in using the root account with a standard password, which is Dietpi. So the first thing you're going to do, my dear friends, is change that password. Okay? Don't be a noob. right? This is like the master key that everybody knows that's out there. This is like, the car keys that are on the outside of the door of your Ferrari as you parked it in the hood with a big flashing light that says keys to Ferrari here. So, opening up a system like that directly to the internet with the standard password, it's going to get you pwned so fast. It's going to hurt. So change that password. Please do. And then you either launch one of the Dietpi commands, because this is basically a Debian command line interface. You got Linux right there, but they have some very interesting ncurses, text-based menus that help you configure your Pi. Dietpi-config is one of the commands that you want to use to configure your freshly set up Dietpi. So you can change the IP address very easily, tweak around with some settings on how it deals with external hard drives. You can just set up your machine like you want to set it up. Change passwords, change the host name. Don't call it Dietpi. That's lame. Just call it something else. Because otherwise, if a hacker, kind of walks by and he sees like, oh, the host name is Dietpi. I wonder what distribution's on there and what the default password for that root user might be. So, okay, don't be a noob. So change your host name, change your IP, set it up, and then you can start installing software. Now, there are 3 ways to install software on a Dietpi. There is the manual way, because you have a command line, it's Debian, it understands the apt command, and you can install whatever you want to install using, sudo. You don't need sudo. You're logged in as root. Apt get install and whatever package that you want. If the package is not available in the repositories, then add the repositories. If you have dependencies, well, that's your own fault because you wanted to do it manually. The whole, idea behind Dietpi is that you don't have to do it manually. Using the dietpi-software command, you can choose out of 2 big lists of software that are optimized for your Dietpi. One is the standard Dietpi software, which is an entire list of cool applications that, you can install, command line applications, all kind of stuff that just, work. They're fine. They're not really complicated. Basically standard command line apps and stuff. You can install them. Whoop-de-doo. And then there is the optimized for Dietpi menu. Now, the optimized for Dietpi menu means, it's a whole bunch of awesomeness, because this will install software to your Dietpi, which is not only optimized to use, as resource efficient as possible, so not create a big overhead, because this was designed for a Raspberry Pi, a computer the size of I don't know, a big box of matches or something. Or a deck of cards, playing cards, poker cards. And now you've kind of, put this thing on a i5 or i7 server, or what have you. I think it even runs on a Xeon processor now. That would be cool. I still have one lying around. I should play around with that. Just saying, the software is optimized to be as resource efficient as possible. Then it also takes care of all of the dependencies that might incur after you install something on your OS, because nothing is more a pain in the butt than trying to install something and then getting dependency errors and I don't know, GPU keys that are not working or God have you. No. This just works. And then there's, of course, the fact that if you install some services, you have to make sure that they, kind of boots, which is always a pain in the behind, because then you have to go to init.d and make a service out of it and follow all kinds of cryptic how-tos that are, completely fine if you developed the whole thing, but to a layman, it's like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. You don't have to do that. Stuff just works. And there are a lot of things out there. So I'm just going to mention a few. And some of them are not, well, the software isn't illegal. What they do might be illegal. So whether or not you want to use them, totally up to you. Your responsibility. I don't condone piracy. I don't support piracy. So if you use them, totally up to you. I'll just tell them what they do. Disclaimer. Okay? Fine. All right. The lawyers can go back to bed. First thing that I looked for were, applications that would give me stuff, that would give my server the functionalities that I would love to do. So I played around with a couple of them, and I'll give you the best of. 3 things that you might want to install, and we're going to go, right off the rails, right off the bat, are LiDAR, sonar, and radar. This is the holy trinity of piracy, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it is. Now, what are they? They are content gathering devices. Content gathering applications that, I'll just tell you what to do. Radar. Imagine you want to view a movie, yet said movie is not available on Netflix in your country, on your planet, or in your budget. So you just install Radar, go to the web interface, enter the movie that you want to find. It will go on to the big movie database in the sky and say to you, this movie is available. In what format would you like to download it? You can choose whatever resolution and format that you want. And then you have to tie in Radar with an indexer. This is a service that ties it into basically an index, a catalog of torrents. So it will go onto the internet and it will search out torrents for you. And if it finds the torrent for the movie that you entered in the resolution that you preferred, it will download it automatically with the help of your transmission client, of your BitTorrent client. A little bit more about that later on. Now, this is very interesting for the movies that are already out there, but also for the movies that are not out there, at least not yet. You can set Radar on guard. So basically have the service running in the background, punch in a couple of movies that are not available right now, but you would like to have them downloaded, and Radar will keep them on its radar and look for them, find the torrent, and automatically download them. Bringing you straight into piracy, but that, again, is your problem. That's what Radar does. Then there's sonar. Sonar kind of does the same thing, but for TV shows. How about you would like to see a TV show that isn't available in your country, on Netflix, in your budget, or whatever, on your planet? I don't know. You say to Sonar, hey Sonar, you log into the web interface of Sonar, you enter the series that you would like to watch, and you tell Sonar, I would like the upcoming episodes, I would like the latest season, I would like to have all of the episodes that I am still lacking in my collection, or I would just like to download the whole Shazam. Please do so. Just like with Radar, Sonar will use the indexer that you tied in, look upon the big wide internet, find the torrents, feed them to your transmission download client, and download them automatically. Very interesting. And then there, of course, is LiDAR, which does the same thing, but for music. Hey, are you a big fan of the Beastie Boys? Or, I know, NSYNC. Yeah, you're a really big fan of NSYNC. But of course, you don't want to go to the store anymore to buy an NSYNC album. People would laugh at you. And stores where they sell music don't exist anymore. So would you rather stream them on Spotify or be a cheesy skeepskate and not want to mess up your algorithms and hide the fact that you're a big NSYNC fan from your family and your girlfriend and download them illegally? Well, you can. Would you like every album that they ever made? Would you like only the latest album? And God forbid, should they ever reunite and do a comeback and bring a new album onto the market, infesting the music and my eardrums with this kind of blasphemy, I can download that for you automatically as well. It will then go out, find the torrent, feed it to your download client, and the content will be downloaded automatically. The holy trinity of piracy is basically Radar, Sonar, and LiDAR, available as fully automated and working applications on Dietpi. Now, I already mentioned that you might need a headless download client. Well, you have a headless download client. You can actually choose from several torrent clients that you can install, or torrent servers that you can install on your Raspberry Pi. Now, this is one I do use. Using Dietpi, I installed Transmission Daemon, which is a web-based interface to a transmission server. And you can either, have the Holy Trinity talk to it and feed it torrents, or you can upload torrents yourself and say, I want to have this torrent file. Now, I do this for, especially for Linux distros, because I like bandwidth. Everybody does. Also, the people that put those images out there, they don't want their bandwidth sucked dry by 50,000 simultaneous HTTP downloads. Let's be a little bit, friendly here and share the bandwidth. So I always download my distributions that I want to try out using the torrent file because it's faster and it's easier on the bandwidth for the guys putting it out there. It's also great if you're not at home and you want to download that torrent client. For example, there's a new Linux distro out that I want to try. I'm actually, somewhere else, or I'm using my tablet or something. I just, copy the link to the torrent file, go to the web interface of transmission, feed it in there, press start, and it will download it on my server. And I don't have to keep my computer running anymore. It just all does it on the server. Really nice stuff. Now, once you get stuff or you have stuff, that's all up to you. You can also use something like Plex to play that media on different devices, like, for example, your iPad or your PC or your TV. I have a Fire Stick in my TV, and we use it to play content from our Plex server. Plex is great. Plex plays everything. Plays TV shows, it plays music, it plays movies. So I like Plex, but there are a plethora, that's the word, plethora of applications out there that you can install that give you a web interface or a media interface to your client. And I'm just mentioning a couple of them, but there are a lot of them that you can choose from, like, Kodi, set and forget, install script, boom. Works right into your right on your Dietpi server, gets booted up automatically. Everything just works, and there are a ton of them out there. I am also playing around with Mobidity, which is kind of like a web-based Spotify clone for your own content, which is great. You can stream it and do all kinds of funky things with it. I really like it. So there's a lot out there. Now, for example, you might have an ebook collection or a PDF collection that you want to share, and sharing your comics or your PDFs or your books via shared drive isn't really friendly. You can't browse the covers and stuff like that. So I have been using Calibre for the longest time. Calibre is like the cat's meow when it comes to a good ebook client, but it's also a great ebook server. You can put a web interface on it, but you have to leave it running in the background. There are some workarounds, but too complicated. So one of the things that really works is a service called Ubiquity. And Ubiquity is just that, you install it from the menu, you go to the web interface and you tell Ubiquity, hey, Ubiquity, here are my EPUBs, here are my Mobis, here's my CBZs, and here is my PDF, man. And it will just, boom, host them like that. Go to the web interface and boom, there are all your books. You can browse through them, you can download them, you can even read them in the browser. That is what your machine will do for you. Really, really nice stuff. And additionally, there's also the option to kind of use your Dietpi server as a server. So you can set up PyVPN, which is an open VPN server. So you can use your iPhone or your Mac or your Windows PC or your iOS device to set up an open VPN connection straight to your server. It's very easy to configure. It's one command to add a user. You just shove over the certificate and the client can connect. Now, I know what you're saying. Nightwise, I'm never going to figure that out. They have great documentation in explaining what every single piece of software in the menu is, what the source web page is, where you can find more documentation, what the URL is, and what port you have to use to access it on your server, and how it actually works. And this documentation is fantastic. It's short, it's precise, it's exactly to the point. I love it. So OpenVPN is nice to use if you need a VPN. Pi-hole is nice, which is kind of like, your own DNS server that eats ads for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Basically, you set it up and you use it as your DNS server, and all of the ads will get dropped and you will just get the content that you need. There's a lot of interesting stuff to be said there. And I know listener of the show, Gerjon, talked to me about analyzing what his devices do on his network and which services they call for ads and tracking and stuff. It's really scary stuff, but having a Pi-hole kind of stops that for, a big part. And there's, of course, the fact that you can also use it as a regular SSH server, so you can SSH into it, use it as a shuttle, which is an SSH tunnel protocol endpoint and stuff. It just, works, and it's really, really great. And those are just a few of the pieces of software that you can select from the menu, that you can install, and that you don't have to configure. You just log into the web interface, you set them up like you want to set them up, but they just work. And there are a ton of them out there, and it all works using Dietpi. Now, before I am going to send you rushing towards the Dietpi webpage, because you want to try this out for yourself, because you can run it in a VM too, I'm going to give you some final tips, and then we're going to wrap up. So you see, Dietpi is kind of like the cat's meow when it comes to having both the convenience of an appliance, which kind of just works, and having the ability to run multiple services on a Raspberry Pi or an i386 system, and still having the ability to use it as a regular Linux system, because there were a lot of dedicated Raspberry Pi distributions out there, which were great. But in the end, I needed like 5 or 6 Raspberry Pis to run it, which was nice, but then I would have like 5 or 6 systems to maintain. Now it's all in one system, and it just works, and I didn't have to install it manually and do all of that cruft that comes with it. So it was really, really nice. But what you need to think about, and this is something that you need to think about whenever you're using pre-installed images, is that, these are largely distributed systems that all have the same password, that all have the same login, and that all have the same public key. So what you do after you use them is that you make sure, A, you change the default passwords. B, if possible, use different users or usernames than the ones provided by default. C, disable root login via SSH when you're pointing your SSH port towards the internet. D, reset your private and your public keys. You can reset them by doing a dpkg-reconfigure OpenSSH-server if you're using an OpenSSH server. So kind of reset those keys. And of course, perform regular updates, because you're using a distribution that is kind of the same for everybody. It's not like, everybody configures it differently, but the base system is kind of like the same. So do your updates, be healthy, and, read up on what's going down, if there are any bugs that might be out there or any security bugs that you might need to take a look at. So it's very easy to install, but these systems are in set and forget. Just like any server on your network, they require regular maintenance. Great thing is that Dietpi also comes with a backup script. So if you ever need to install it fresh, you can back up the software and the configurations that you made, and it will kind of add those to the boot and nuke system that you have given it. So it will kind of reconfigure a new Dietpi distro like the one that you had before, which is also very interesting. And so that's something that you should, take into account. A lot of these web interfaces are not HTTPS, so beware when you are using them over the WAN, so over the internet. Please, just use a VPN to tunnel into your Dietpi server and configure all the web interfaces over that VPN connection. And of course, be aware that, not all of your activities with the holy trinity of piracy are legal. So be very careful with that. You have to be very aware of what laws you are breaking should you venture down that path, and if it's worth the risk. From a cross-platform perspective, it's the cat's meow. I love it. I just use all of the web interfaces, and I have quite a few right now on my zero-tier server to make it do what it needs to do, and it just works. So I really, really like playing around with it that way. It's cool. I've even installed it on a Raspberry Pi that I have in my DMZ that is facing the internet, because my other server is not. And I try to experiment on that Raspberry Pi and on that distro of Dietpi before I install or configure the actual service on my production system, kind of, having a playing around system and a production system. And it's a great little way of finding a balance between having something very nerdy that you can play around with and having the technology just work for you. And that is all we have time for on the Nightwise.com podcast. It's been great doing a show with you guys again, sitting in front of the microphone, getting stuff done, recording stuff, and talking about all of the geeky projects that I'm working on. I didn't have a lot of time the last couple of months with the company being so busy, but I decided that I need to find some more time in my life to experiment and tell you guys and girls about how to let technology work for you. If you want to get in touch, you can. We have a Telegram channel. I'll put the link in the show notes, where you can jump in and talk to the other Nightwise.com fans. Or you can just go to the website where you can, leave a comment or, get stuff out of your system if you need to. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on the Nightwise.com website and on Telegram. And that's about it. I'm not doing a lot with the Facebook things these days. Just, enjoying myself and geeking out and finding other ways to talk to you guys and girls. So until then, whether or not you're using Dietpi, let technology work for you instead of the other way around. See you guys.
You have been listening to the Nightwise.com podcast, the show with hacks, tips and tweaks for cross-platform geeks. Send your feedback, questions, or start your own personal flame war by contacting us directly on feedback@nightwise.com. You can support the show by sharing it with your friends or writing us a nice iTunes review at www.nightwise.com/iTunes. If you have some credits to spend, click the PayPal button on the Nightwise.com website to help us pay the bills. Just remember, there is real life outside cyberspace. But it's not all that important.